David's films, dating very far back, his films are so uniquely his own, you know, and there's only a handful of filmmakers, I think, that you can say that about, you know, where they really have such a strong signature themselves. And no one else can do the films that they do. And David's one of those people. And some of his films are very disturbing, and some of his films are very funny, and almost all of them are sort of a mixture of a lot of different things. But it's hard to articulate what it is that make them his, but they are all his, and quite... Anyway, and I'm excited by that. I was very... and wanted to work with him very badly. This, quite by coincidence, I guess, I was sent the screenplay for CRASH, and was very interested and excited by the material, but I'm not so sure I would have done it if David wasn't directing it. Ballard, James Ballard, the character I play in the film, gets in a car crash very early on in the film, and it changes his life. In some ways it's a liberating experience, in some ways it's an ignition within him in an odd way. His eyes open in a way that they weren't open before. And then the story becomes a series of crashes in different ways throughout the film, you know, crashes in a very literal sense, car crashes, and then also human collisions, you know, and it's interesting how the two become inseparable. I mean, the film is about sex and car crashes. That's what it's about. The sexuality of these characters in this film, interspersed with car crashes, and how they meld the two. So, when you're seeing these people's lives, you're seeing their lives through the lens of their sexuality. So, what do these people eat for breakfast? You don't ever find out. Okay? What they do when they go out with friends and sit and chat around the table and sort of joke with each other, you don't see that. That's not a part of the story. What you see in these people's lives is their sexuality. So when I talk to you about, for instance, what his relationship with his wife is like at that time, I can tell you what the sexuality of their life is. Their sexuality at the beginning is quite disconnected, quite masturbatory. They are exploring relationships outside of their marriage, and then they bring those explorations home with them and share them with each other and utilize that for their own sexual relationship. But it's all quite selfish and quite self-involved and quite masturbatory. It's not until this occurrence happens, this very bad automobile accident that Ballard, my character, the husband, gets in near the beginning of the film, and then this world that he becomes more and more curious about, which is a world that's around us all the time, but it's something that our eyes aren't really focused on, that they then have something to share again, you know, that they truly have something they can share again. And he shares it with a lot of people, and so does she.
I had wanted to work with Cronenberg for years, and about once every 6 months I would ask my agent, so what's Cronenberg up to? And he became very, very accustomed to just checking into Cronenberg's office to see what was going on. And when CRASH came up, once again he made his regular, obligatory phone call for me, and there were some women's roles that might be interesting for me to look into. And Cronenberg offered me this role of Helen Remington, and I read the book by J.G. Ballard, and I just really wanted to be involved in a very dark world, and Cronenberg, without exception, explores that. I mean, I certainly know as I go on in my career that I find it much more interesting to tackle parts that are far away from myself. That's the area that I find most exciting for me to venture into. And this movie certainly supplied me with that. I think it harkens back to what I was saying before about being in a naturalistic style movie or being in a Cronenberg movie. It's just much more challenging. It's much more scary. It's much riskier to depart really from who I am and go somewhere quite a bit far away. I think she's a woman of great mystery, and I think there's so much inexplicable about her, and there are so many questions that remain unanswered about her from beginning to end. But I think one of the things that is most fascinating is that you see her transformation when you meet her. She goes through a car crash upon introduction, and from that action she is transformed and enters this whole other world. But I think all the characters have great mystery in this movie. The way that eroticism was explored without apology was something that I really was interested in doing, and I think that David is never crass in his explorations of this kind of erotic world, that he seems to always be flirting with. Either he's attacking it full on as a director, or else he's really kind of flirting around the edges of unabashed eroticism in his movies. And so I thought that it would be a very tasteful but full-on examination of that.
When I first read it, I thought, he was this TV scientist, the guy who was obsessed with computerized management of world traffic, and just that alone is just wanting to control everything. That has this disfiguring accident. In the book, it's much more severe than it is in the film. Everything about him, but you can't play. I've discovered you can't play the scars. You got them. So it started to become more about emotional scars. You feel like there's a net underneath when you go out on a limb, and there's a net that he's gonna look out for you. And I just love him. There's his energy, right? His energy radiates to everyone on the set. We get a chance to. He's assembled a group of people that he has worked with many times before, and the actors, and we're in this sandbox. And what else can we do? And the fact that all the actors are excited about their roles is he's just delighted. He's just we're all lucky, I felt like I'm going to get in a car and I'm going to put some distance between me and between my home here and the Odyssey, and it just started that way for me. I needed to be able to see the highway. He's described as a nightmare angel of the highways. I felt like you know, I'll drive, I'll go to sleep, I'll see the highway. Whatever that did for me, I needed to do that. I couldn't just like get on a plane, hop here, and be like, I'm in this. I needed to put some distance. You mull over the character, you think about it. Time to be yourself on your own, stopping in inns everywhere, visiting friends, but at the same time knowing you're going to this place, and it added all this element to it, you know.
The truth is, when I read it, I was terrified. I was terrified. The piece terrified me. The book terrified me. Just because it challenges the social reflexes that we're conditioned to sort of have. It not only challenges them, it obliterates them, it abuses them. It's very abusive. It required a lateral way of approaching this for me. I am the only character that is not initiated into this world by a random, say, act of a car crash, of an accident. And Catherine's entrance into this world is very purposeful. And therein I had to spring some traps in my own mind to figure out what would make someone predisposed to doing that. Where is this character when she starts? What is she predisposed to? What is she lacking? And therefore, how will this Antichrist figure, how will this character of Vaughn impact her? What is he a catalyst for? What does he provide a catalyst for in my husband that takes him from me? Because we do start the piece, however odd my world is with James, it works. And that's very common with couples. They get into a rhythm of the day. This is their life. This is how they wake up. This is what they accept and they don't accept in each other. And that is indeed how we start this piece, as the happy little campers that we are. Without, and of course you have to see that without certain types of moral judgment. Distilled, they're a couple who have a rhythm that they're used to. They have a relationship which is fine. In their separateness, they are without a doubt together. The incident of the car accident for James is the catalyst that reveals to me we are no longer one. Something's happened to him that does not include me. And I am no longer satisfying enough. Our way is no longer enough. And in order to aim for that kind of ultimate fusion with him, I am then required to go on a journey. Attempting to embrace the sexual ennui that is required for the character of Catherine is just humorous because it's the antithesis of me. And so that has been, I think, challenging because it's not commonplace. It is not commonplace for Deborah at all to have that narcotized sensation with so much stimulus and in a very elastic sense of eroticism. And for that to become as casual as sipping a cup of coffee like I do every morning, there's a journey in there somewhere. It's just naturally evolved that because of who he is, I felt, I guess, brave enough to just place myself in his situation every day without a backup plan. Because that would have been very restrictive. In this sort of situation, it requires a sort of emotional and physical fluidity that it's very mercurial what happens on set. And there's a lot of percolation that happens. You think about, you have everything he says, or where James is at in the piece, or where Elias is at in the piece. And also my role is one of the passive acceptor, to some extent. And I have to, I'm required to remain open to everyone. That's not easy, because a lot of this stuff is terrifying, if I was to stop and think about what I was doing.
When I wrote Crash in 1971-72, 25 years ago, it did seem pretty unlikely that it would ever be filmed. I mean, it seemed impossible in the context of early 1970s cinema. But of course the 1990s are very different. In a way, the 1990s have caught up with Crash, and people are much more willing to face the implications of, you know, the landscape in which we live, which is saturated with sex and violence. In recent years, of course, I've begun to feel that, yes, one day it would be filmed, and of course, to be filmed, to have a book like Crash filmed by David Cronenberg is, you know, everything that, you know, you can dream of. It's something like 25 years since I wrote Crash, and in a sense I think the prophecy that Crash embodies has been fulfilled. I think people recognize that. People are much more honest about the nature of their own sexualities, about the nature of their own imaginations. They're much more aware of the role that the technological landscape plays in their lives. I think I mean, no prediction of the future, even 25 years ahead, could be accurate, but I'm not disappointed in the prophecies, you know, that I made when I wrote Crash, and I think had I been wrong, it wouldn't have been possible to film the book so effectively as David has done. I don't endorse, you know, everything in either the novel or the film of Crash. To some extent, both are cautionary tales. They warn against the kind of nightmare marriage between sex and technology that is being celebrated within our minds every day of the year. Both are warnings, but at the same time, they're invitations to explore this terrain cautiously, thoughtfully, but openly and frankly, because that's the most important thing of all. Crash, above all, is a frank novel, and David has produced this even more frank film.
Well, for me, one of the magic parts of any artistic process is to call forth responses to whatever it is that you're doing that are not button push kind of responses, are not the normal kind of knee-jerk responses that you get from most entertainment, which, you know, basically says this is going to make you laugh, this is going to make you cry, it's not going to be too complicated. I think if you come away from Crash feeling in an intense emotional state, but not one that you could exactly say what it is, then I think that the movie has worked properly, because it avoids it, as Ballard's book does. It avoids all the emotional response cliches that are there, which in making the film, for me, I had to consider as pitfalls to be avoided, because as soon as you go for the cheap laugh or cry or feeling of tragic relief, you are, I think, betraying what drew me to the film, to the book in the first place, which is this very strange, complex response that you have to it. The book Crash was sent to me by a journalist, actually, and a film journalist, and with a little note
Visita mi
saying, I
canal.
think I'd done an interview with her, and I think she was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time, and she had just said, I think you should make this into a movie. And I started to read the book, and I got about halfway through, and I could not read it anymore. I had to put it away. Its effect on me was very profound and disturbing, and I just was not ready to have that happen to me. And I didn't get back to the book for about 6 more months. And then I finished it, and I thought, I would never make a movie out of this book. I don't think you could. And then about 2 years later, in a conversation with Jeremy Thomas, with whom I had made Naked Lunch, and who has a very esoteric taste in terms of authors and movies, I suddenly found myself saying, you know, Jeremy, we should make CRASH. I really surprised myself by saying that. I was completely taken by surprise because it was the last thing that I thought I would ever do. Because of the sexuality of CRASH, the work with the actors was just that much more delicate and sensitive and intense. I don't think in terms of the actual acting it was different for me from what I've gradually developed into over the years as a director of actors. But it required this requires another level of trust on the part of the actors, that they are protected, that they are understood, and that their fears are acknowledged and worked with. Because there's a lot of physicality, a lot of nudity, a lot of exposure, a lot of, in short for the actor, a lot of vulnerability. And I did things that are often not done, which is to say that I would let my actors look at the tapes while we're shooting. I can see everything on a TV monitor. It's a very common thing to do now. Video assist, it's called. And it's an invaluable tool for me to be able to watch exactly. I'm literally watching through the lens at a distance. So it's no longer only the cameraman who sees what's unfolding. And I tape that while we're shooting it. And it's actually, I understand, not that common for actors to be allowed to look at each take as it unfolds. First of all, because it takes time, and secondly, some directors, I think, worry about actors not liking what they're seeing and then becoming difficult or whatever. But I felt it was important to do that, to allow the actors to see what they were doing as a matter of trust and as a matter of collaboration. The strange thing about CRASH is, and this holds in an odd way for the book, but even perhaps more for the movie, is that it is not. It's not really about violence, and it's not about sexual violence. In fact, I mean, in a way, it appalls me to be able to say this, that the film is in many ways politically correct, and I hate this, but. Because the sexuality, odd as it is all consensual in the film. And I only hate it because I would hate to be labeled politically correct, but in fact, it's important that that be the case in the film. It's about people who are actively trying to create a new form of sensuality, of sexuality, of eroticism. And so it is important that it not be something that is ever forced on them, but it's something that they are developing from within them. They've all experienced car crashes which have somehow unleashed a kind of erotic energy that surprises them, and that they try to, in his own way, tries to incorporate into their lives. And so the film, although the car crashes are violent in the sense that car crashes are violent, it's really not. There are no guns in the movie, no knives in the movie. It's not. It's not. There are no rapes in the movie. It's not. It's not really. It's not violent in the normal sense at all. It does violence to people's understanding of human relationships. It does violence to people's understanding of eroticism. I think that's where the violence is, and if people find it disturbing, that's where the disturbing element is.
Ken. I just need. I need somebody here to set the car each time. Good job, Ken. Standing by.
We're up the keys.
Great. You know what, Brent? Take it over, but then let's reset it so it's on the right line. Come forward.
You know, I'm thinking that maybe
Time to get more in a straight line. You see how you face this way? Just get it so you're more in a line this way. Okay, now straighten it out.
Should I turn that
Okay,
on?
go down here.
No, I like that.
Okay, straighten your wheel.
It's a very good count.
Yeah. Okay, that's way better. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's do it.
great. All right.
Speed.
76, take 2, Mark.
Creation on this thing.
Background action. Action.
There's some blood on the car. Here in the handle and on the wheel and also in the wheel well. If the police stop you again, they may impound the car.
You're right, Ballish. And I'm at car wash by the airport service area. Got it.
It's not running properly. This is pretty much where I was. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, they're coming.
Yeah, he's got it. Some pressure. You mind? You want to pressure? Yeah, because
The glasses here. So there you have that.
All right, guys, let's get it. Action.
So she would be
slid down to that seat kind of thing?
Yeah, but make it more back because I really don't. Okay, almost the back seat is fine. Okay. Okay, try the back seat.
Passenger back seat. Look, see? Yeah, it's going to be great. Look, it'll be a essence of body in there. Yeah. She's just, great. I know it is great. It's all right. It's just a shot. Okay, right. Here we go. And I'm going to give a back on action before the action's over. Yep. Here we go. And roll sound. Rolling. Speed.
78, take 1, 8 camera.
Okay. Background action. Action. Action.
Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1, action!
We should have shot it. It's nice.
Yeah, it's wild, huh? That's why you need airbags.
That's it.
That's why you need airbags in your vehicle.
Who won? Did they ever?
We didn't want to go any faster. Either one.
We needed another truck to move it.
David to Mike Kavanaugh.
That's a cut.
That was vile!
That was exciting. Whoa.
No, everybody's clear and everything else, right? We're just clear the whole thing, the whole road.
So that one.
Somebody's on the table.